Untamed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Platform.
iOS, it's only sport. Martin, Devlin, Lachlan War. We talk sport in the afternoons on the platform. We don't do the politics and bollocks. We just talk sport. So many issues today to talk about. Owen Farrell gets off his red card. New Zealand hosting the FIFA Men's World Cup. Oh, stop it, mate. Semi-final last night, Spain beat the Swedes. Tonight, it's Aussie versus England. And let us celebrate with a world champion track cyclist. All this on the pod. But as always, tablets in hand, gather my flock. We start the show with a sermon. Owen Farrell. How the hell did that get overturned? Let's go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
Owen Farrell getting off at the judiciary has just made a mockery of everything World Rugby says about player welfare and protecting the health of their players. Farrell, despite having been sent off versus Wales on the weekend for a no-arms tackle, is now free to play versus Ireland this Sunday morning. Watch the footage. You just got to watch the footage. Under the current guidelines, the way that referees are now instructed to officiate, and they will be instructed to officiate at the Rugby World Cup, everything you've already seen from Super Rugby to internationals, that was as clear a red card as anything before it. He hit Taine Basham flush on the jaw. At the time, the ref issued an on-field yellow. That was then upgraded to a red by the bunker. This is the new rule where the TMO gets a longer look at the incident, so the game is allowed to proceed without everyone standing around just waiting for this decision to be made. And then if the TMO determines that it should be upgraded yellow to red, he advises the ref and the game gets stopped and the player gets sent off. And that is what happened. Farrell should have been facing a minimum 4-week ban, which meant he would have missed the first, if not first, 2 matches at the World Cup. But no, the judiciary has found, and I quote, a late change in dynamics due to fellow England player James George's involvement in the contact area brought about a sudden and significant change in direction from the ball carrier, meaning he ducked into the tackle or something similar or equally idiotic, and therefore they say it should have only been a sin binning and no red card. So, no further punishment for Farrell. It's inexplicable. Again, watch the footage. The reaction worldwide has been one of incredulity and indignation, and rightly so. What is the difference, for example, between what Farrell did to Angus Ta'avau's red card versus Ireland last year? And that was a genuine accident. There's no difference at all. If you're going to get sent off for that, you've got to be sent off for this. And that's the problem here. There is no consistency. It's either head contact with no arms or it's not. And that incident with Farrell is as clear as any that you're going to watch. The guy has more than just form, and this has to be taken into account as well. He's already been banned this year in January for something virtually exactly the same. He was banned in 2016, 2020. Questions are also already been asked. If he was anyone other than the England captain, would he have got away with it? Or I'd say he'd been a Pacific Island player or a French player, an Argentinian player. We'd all just be saying, oh, the dirty frogs or the dirty Argies, wouldn't we? And this is World Rugby's massive problem right now because it is indefensible. Lawyer gobbledygook and fancy-dancy wording doesn't hide or disguise how bad the tackle was. This is a godsend for every lawsuit against the game's rulers, proving that they do not protect their players from the dangers of the game. It is ridiculous, idiotic, it is wrong. And you know what, World Rugby? This is the worst bit. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The Platform.
All right, Lachlan. Today there's a fair heap of sports news. Rock and roll.
Yep, I'll start off with last night's FIFA World Cup semi-final at Eden Park between Spain and Sweden. Now, I went to bed because I was tired and I'm an old man.
Don't tell me you went to bed before the 80th minute mark.
I did. I went to bed at the 70-minute mark. And I thought, it's 0-0. It's probably going to go to extra time. Maybe I'll watch the rest in bed. And then I woke up to see the score at 2-1, the final score. So I was a bit annoyed that I didn't stick around for at least another 20 minutes to see what was no doubt a very entertaining finish. But Spain winning 2-1 in the first of 2 semi-finals over Sweden. They go through to the final, which is, I'm assuming, at Stadium Australia.
Sunday,
yeah. Yeah, Sunday, yep. Sunday. So they'll meet one of Australia or England who play in the second semi-final today at 10 o'clock. And that one is at Homebush. So
What's it called these days? I've always called it Homebush too, but that's because when I went to the Olympics in 2000, it was Homebush. That's where it was.
Accor Stadium.
Accor. So this is the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Emirates Airline Stadium, South Africa is where again?
Stop it. That's Ellis Park.
Ellis Park.
But to be fair to Homebush, it was called ANZ Stadium for about 10 years, and it's only called Accor Stadium in recent years. Alrighty, other news. The New Zealand Kiwis International Rugby League schedule for 2023 has been locked in, and it includes an exciting triple header. New Zealand will be part of a Pacific Championship Tri-Series alongside Australia and Samoa. Now, hold up. That was a report. I have since received an email, well, not just me, but a whole lot of people. I don't think Australia are involved. And I can't find this email. This is sensational. Here we go. Eden Park, here we go. Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland's Eden Park will host a blockbuster rugby league triple header between New Zealand, Samoa and Tonga on Saturday, October 21st, as part of the newly announced Pacific Championship in partnership with the NRL. So apologies, that first thing that I read out was a report by News Hub last night. Right. And actually, they were wrong. It's not Australia. It's New Zealand, Samoa and Tonga.
Well, it's exciting anyway.
Yeah, it's exciting.
I love the Kiwi side, mate. I love the Kiwis.
So the Kiwis will face Samoa, igniting a new Pacific rivalry hot off last year's World Cup momentum. Kiwi Ferns will line up against Tonga, and an NZ Kiwi A team will assemble for the first time in 17 years. An A side, it's sort of like the New Zealand 15 rugby side that they've got going as well. All right, Tim Sheens will reportedly leave the West Tigers at the end of 2023 and hand the reins off to Benji Marshall to become the new coach. Now, this was set up essentially when Sheens took over as coach, that he would coach them this year and next year, and then Marshall would be coach in 2025. It's been fast-tracked by a year, so Marshall will now be the coach next year. Why this is happening? I would guess because Tim Sheens just can't be bothered coaching a rubbish team for another year, considering he's an older man these days, isn't he, Tim Sheens? All right, the NRL's most in-demand front rower, probably in-demand man, full stop, you could say right now, Payne Haas will remain at the Broncos. The superstar prop has inked a 3-year extension worth 3.5. I think it's 3.6 million Australian dollars is actually what it's worth. The New Zealand Rugby schedule, Super Rugby Pacific schedule, should I say, for 2024 has been revealed. The opener to be a rematch of this year's final between the Chiefs and Crusaders in Hamilton on February 23. The reigning champion Crusaders will begin their quest for an 8th straight title under the guidance of new coach Rob Penny. Round 1 will also see the Hurricanes travel to Perth to face the Western Force. The Blues host the Fijian and Drua in Whangarei, and the Highlanders host Moana Pacifica. Owen Farrell, as Martin talked about before, has avoided suspension for his red card in England's 19-17 win over Wales. It's surprisingly been overturned after a hearing ruled that a late change of direction by the ball carrier contributed to the high contact. So Owen Farrell could have been out as long as up until the quarterfinal of the World Cup. He's not missing anything now, and he's free to play against Ireland this weekend. Some football news: Kevin De Bruyne could miss the next 4 months of the season as Manchester City decide whether he needs surgery on a hamstring injury. This has been confirmed by manager Pep Guardiola. Chelsea have agreed a fee of £53 million plus £5 million in add-ons for Southampton midfielder Romeo Lavia. So Chelsea have now spent over £800 billion. It's over $1 billion US over the last 3.
Ian's texted in about this. Yeah. You're right. How, Ian? How can they get away with the fair financial play rules?
There's a great explanation, which is kind of which we can talk about later in the show. Okay, there's a very good explanation for it. And I think actually, this is just great. Neymar has joined Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia, and I just love what he's come out and said to the media. Let me get this story up here. I want to write new sporting history. Neymar says, I've achieved a lot in Europe and enjoyed special times, but I've always wanted to be a global player and test myself with new challenges and opportunities and a lot of money in new places. That's what's making news, Martin.
Devlin.
Oh my goodness me!
The platform.
New Zealand is going to host the men's FIFA World Cup. What? Who said that? Andrew Pragnell, CEO of New Zealand Football. What planet do you live on? The former CEO, Michael Glading, joins us to put some perspective on this. Michael, you're the former CEO of New Zealand Football. Look, I've got to say, I love aspiration, I love reaching for the stars, and I love people having dreams. But, what I find just so irritable about this is that, for a start, I think Andrew's saying things that he doesn't really know what he's saying, and then it gets reported verbatim as fact by our mainstream media who refuse to even scrutinise or challenge. What is the reality? I mean, you've been in this position of New Zealand hosting a men's FIFA World Cup.
Yeah, it seems, unless the world is, and look, to be fair, it's been 10 plus years since I have been involved, but it seems far-fetched. I mean, it just, having had the joy of actually been to a World Cup wearing, if you like, a New Zealand football hat. I've been to one wearing a private citizen hat as well. But when you're sort of, if you like, behind the scenes, as I was to some degree, I served on the FIFA committee during the World Cup in South Africa, you just see the magnitude, the size of the event. Now, we would have people and manpower that can assist in that. I've got no issue with that. But just the facilities, I just can't see it right here. I can't, it's one thing to sell out stadiums of 40,000 people. These World Cups are selling out stadiums of 80 to 100,000 people. We just don't have those stadiums. And this, let us not forget, first and foremost, as we all know about FIFA, it is about the money. I mean, yes, it's the world game, and yes, they do their best to try and spread the word and do a good job, you'd have to say. But that is what they use the age group events for, and maybe to some degree the women's event as well. It's not belittling the Women's World Cup, it's simply saying that they will play those in markets which can make it meaningful with stadiums of 40 to 50,000. But honestly, the Men's World Cup, it is like the Olympics. It is just another level, and I just can't see how we could host or co-host an event like that. I personally can't see it.
Australia have put bids in before, and they got gazumped by Qatar. I mean, you only have to type into Google the corruption behind Qatar getting the World Cup, and then sit down and have a cup of tea, because it's going to take you 3 months to read it all. And I'm also sort of sitting there thinking, just in terms of the rotational aspect, regardless of what goes on behind closed doors with FIFA, that Europe had it in 2018. Well, Russia had it. Europe, and that means the western side of Europe have got their hand up again. The Saudis have put a bid in. South America and Argentina are going to want it again. Africa as a continent is going to want it again. And I haven't even mentioned the word China. Now, China have been promised a World Cup by FIFA. So somewhere at the back of this list, all the way back here, is Australia saying, we'd quite like to as well. I just think that's a reasonable, practical reality of it, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think everything you say there is the facts. I mean, traditionally, of course, the event has fluctuated between South America / North America and Europe, and that's rightly expanded, and as you say, went to South Africa. But again, let us not forget, this is it is the most important keg in a machine that just grinds out money. And whether we like it or not, the world of sport revolves around money, and the higher it goes, the more that's crucial. And the Football World Cup is, I'd say, alongside the Olympics, the two biggest revenue generators of any sporting event anywhere in the world. And I can't see that changing. FIFA are doing their best to dumb it down by getting as many countries playing in the event as they can.
That's right.
But again, that is ultimately about the money, right? It's about actually having the broadcast being more meaningful in more markets, selling more sponsorship and getting more money. That's what it's about.
So when you went to South Africa, they purpose-built 5 new stadiums. They also had to extensively upgrade another 5 stadiums. It's not just that, though. There's a whole lot of infrastructure that FIFA demand as well, isn't it?
Oh, completely, absolutely. And of course, in South Africa, there was basically, again, that was a country still in this case of re-establishing itself, re-establishing its credibility. Can you imagine the money that, well, we all know that half the FIFA execs were fired around that time, and it wasn't, and that was the South African bid was certainly tainted with, shall we say, large envelopes from what we read. So yeah, look, again, I keep going back to money, and don't get me wrong, I do think FIFA genuinely are there to foster the game around the globe. I'm not in any way disputing that, but this is the cash cow. This is the big one, and it will continue to go to big market. I believe it'll go back to Africa again, because politically, and also not forget, it's all about votes as well, right? So Mr. Infantino to get re-elected, just like Mr. Blatter before him, had to not only smooth the palms but make promises. Yeah. So, and the African continent has a huge number of votes within FIFA. So I believe it will go back to Africa. But again, the money, as you say, that goes into the money, the stadiums we played at, and when we were in South Africa, I mean, these were just, in small villages, stadiums that held sort of 60,000 people, that had underground back entrances and dressing rooms to die for. I mean, I so would love to go back and see what's happening with them now.
It's time, Lachlan.
News
We're going to play a little game.
We need to talk.
Not that.
We need to talk.
It's called What is More Chance of Happening?
Next!
What is more chance of happening, Lachlan, that New Zealand gets given the hosting rights to the FIFA Men's World Cup, or Auckland hosts the 5th Grand Slam World Tennis Tour event just after Augusta give up the Masters and hand it to Gulf Harbour?
That is a very tough one. Because the first one's not happening.
Ever.
And the second one's probably not happening either. But I think the second one's got more chance.
Well, I believe it's got more chance. I believe that Gulf Harbour is the new Augusta.
Next!
What is more chance of happening? That we will host FIFA's Men's World Cup in our lifetimes, or Mark Robinson and New Zealand Rugby come up with a brilliant marketing plan to save the NPC?
The second one's more likely.
The first one's more likely.
No, it's
the
not.
second one's never going to happen.
The first one's not going to happen.
There's more chance of Mark Robinson coming up with a NPC plan.
Yeah.
And that is how ridiculous this is, Andrew Pragnell.
Then New Zealand host the men's FIFA
That's
World
it.
Cup.
There's more
That is never happening.
And this is it. New Zealand Rugby have given up on the NPC, right? That's already been thoroughly publicly explained by Mark Robinson. There is more chance of that happening, Andrew Pragnell.
Next!
What is more chance of happening, though, Lachlan? We get given the rights to host the FIFA World Cup, or the same kind of crowds attending this Women's World Cup turn up to watch domestic football in New Zealand once the tournament is over.
Well, neither are happening.
There's more chance
There's more chance
of us getting the FIFA World Cup than that one happening. It's not going to happen. It's like the women's rugby. We're caught up in the event, which is fantastic. But people are not going to pay good money to go and watch this domestic product. They're just not.
You don't even have to pay for some of them. You could just walk in for free. Just turn out to the ground.
5,000 to 6,000 is the Phoenix men's regular crowd. 5 to 6 is the women's regular crowd for a Phoenix match.
I am going to say that is more likely because the Wellington Phoenix could host an A-League preliminary final or a semi-final and could attract 40,000 at Westpac Stadium in Wellington. Sorry, Sky Stadium or the Cake Tin. That, or 38 to 40,000, that's got more chance of happening than New Zealand hosting the men's FIFA World Cup. Ever. That's not happening.
What is more chance of happening, though, Lachlan? Andrew Pragnell is right.
No.
And Infantino says, New Zealand, you will host the 2030 FIFA Men's Football World Cup.
Mbappe, get ready. You're camping in Hamilton for 3 weeks.
Or World
month.
Rugby admit that it is a completely corrupt process and Owen Farrell does get banned for the first couple of games of the World Cup.
That is more likely.
There is more chance.
There's actually a chance that could happen. Because as Chris Jones
Slim as
said,
it is.
World Rugby still need to review something or look at something. So they could go, you know what? We've screwed up here. Owen, you're gone for 7
My
weeks.
God, an International Sports Administration with their hand up saying they've screwed up? Has that ever happened?
No.
In the history of fish headness, has it ever happened?
Well, the NFL once when, I think it was around the time that Ray Rice went to prison for beating up his woman or something, and Roger Goodell and NFL, lawmakers or however you want to describe them, came out and said, we got it wrong. We got to get it right. We got to get it right.
We got
to get it right.
What is more chance of happening, Lachlan, that New Zealand is confirmed as the host of the FIFA Men's World Cup sometime within the next 2,000 years? Or Andrew Webb...
within 2000, well, New Zealand could have, conquered the world and, I don't know, Jacinda Ardern the 17th.
We won't have fixed our potholes by then,
Jacinda
mate.
Ardern the 17th
They
could
won't
be the
have finished
emperor.
the central rail line from Britomart to K Road by then.
Yeah, there'll be a review ongoing from Mark Robinson's dying wish when he passed away to carry out another review.
What is more chance happening? New Zealand co-hosts or hosts the FIFA Men's World Cup, or Andrew Webster says, nah, stuff it. I'd rather go and coach the West Tigers.
That's got more chance of happening, absolutely.
That's never going to happen.
It won't happen because Andrew Webster will stick around probably for at least another 4 or 5 years. But based on the history of the Warriors, both on and off the field,
here we go.
dropping the ball with Ivan Cleary twice, if I may say, dropping the ball with Sean Johnson in 2018, saying, yeah, go, test your value. We don't need you. Then that kind of backfired. And then letting slip, at least last year, I'm talking very much recent history here, last year, letting slip 2 players and a coach who came out and pretty much admitted, I don't want to be at this club anymore. A couple of them saying, I didn't know Vodafone was a town in New Zealand. I thought that was in Australia.
Good point.
There's a number of mishaps in the history of the Warriors to suggest that they could absolutely sit there and go, well, we want to keep you, but we only want to give you 3 years and we're not going to pay you that much. She goes, well, hold up, I'm getting more money and more security at the Tigers. Well, good for them. This is our offer.
It's been one of the biggest sports stories of the day today. Owen Farrell, England captain, gets his red card rescinded. The guy is a recidivist offender. Another no-arms tackle smacks Welsh player in the mush. Yellow gets upgraded to red. Now that has been overturned. How the hell do you explain this, World Rugby? Chris Jones joins us. Times on rugbypass.com. Chris, we spoke on Monday and both of us agreed that Owen Farrell, a no-arms tackle, he was going to go for a skate. He was going to miss something from the World Cup. Now, the 3-man Australian panel has rescinded this red card. Words like mockery are being thrown around. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, I think they have completely undermined the new bunker review system. Part of their explanation for saying that, of course, the guilty person in all this now is Jamie George, who pushed Basham in such a way that he was falling into a contact area where Farrell couldn't adjust his hit. Of course, when you look at the stills of the hit he put in, Farrell's legs are absolutely straight. There's no bend, nothing, so you could only go up. So, yeah, that's sort of like that. We digress. Look, the bunker review system is now totally undermined. And part of the thing they said, while they said it wasn't a red card, it was a yellow card, is because they had more time to look at this and more angles than the bloke in the bunker. Now, the point about having a bloke in a bunker is to take away the decision from the referee, who doesn't have the 10-minute process that they give to the bunker to make this decision. So they're now saying that the system they've instigated is no use. It is just ridiculous. This is going to have so many repercussions heading into the World Cup. And I agree with Steve Luatoa, who's going to be playing for Samoa against England, who says, what a joke.
No,
and,
it is.
A lot of people say that.
Well, I'm sitting here while we're talking and I'm watching replays of it, and I can't see any factors at all that would lead to overturning that. I mean, by saying, the guy's dipping down, he makes no attempt to throw his arms into that tackle at all. He's got form. He's got really bad form, and now he's actually free to be able to play away to Ireland this weekend. It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Absolutely. The man in the bunker, by the way, was Ireland's Brian McNeice. So he made the call, which most people agreed with. But thanks to former Wallabies John Langford and David Croft, along with the chairman Adam Castleton, that wasn't right. He got it completely wrong. So now we're also got the situation where people like Professor John Fairclough of the Progressive Rugby unit, who've been pushing, getting rugby to change its attitude to headshots, says it's made a mockery of the World Rugby claim of player welfare is number one in their priority list. And of course it's not. But World Rugby may take action. And I say may with a big M-A-Y, because they claim they're waiting for the full written judgment before they review the decision. And they're going to be under a lot of heat in the next couple of days to reassess this whole decision-making process. And they have the power to say, look, that's wrong. It didn't fall below the foul play threshold for a red card, and we think he should be banned. And that could happen. It just depends whether this amazing sort of loud and raucous yelling and yowling from most of the rugby world calling for Farrell to be banned has an effect. But of course, there are people now saying, yeah, that process was absolutely right, led by Sean Edwards, who said the system has worked, and Kevin Sinfield, who says that he's basically seeing 2,000 tackles, the last 2,000 tackles Owen Farrell's made, and this is just one mistake. But that shouldn't work as a rider for any incident, should it? I mean, one mistake is one mistake, and it's left a guy failing a HIA.
Well, yeah, and he could well miss, several weeks of the World Cup now because of that. Okay, so was it a foul tackle? That's all that. The only question that has to be answered, isn't it? Was it a foul tackle? This is just absurd. So now this bunker, this committee, that is put in place to decide these things on the field and take the pressure off the referee. This has just made this an absolute mockery of this because now, outside of that, there's another committee that can then decide that those who are in place to decide these things can't actually decide these things. So here's a question
then
for
add
you.
Add World Rugby reviewing the full judgment. That's another committee. So they've really clarified the whole system, haven't they? And of course, if this was a Tongan or Samoan or Chilean or Portuguese player, would they have got off?
No, there's no way. Look, it was a French or Argentinian player. Would they have got off? We said, they always play foul. This is what they do. I just think the accusation, this is the England captain or whatever. I mean, there's got to be some credit to that. I mean, else how can you explain it? Every single angle that I'm watching on this, it is a foul hit. It gets upgraded on the field and now it gets completely So what is it determined that because it should have been a yellow on the field, he's now able to play? If that is a legitimate tackle, then nothing that World Rugby has said about protecting the head and protecting the welfare is relevant anymore, is it? If that is a legitimate tackle now.
Absolutely, and if you put yourself in the position of one of the players who's currently starting pre-season training in what they call the community game, the below professional level in England, you now have to go into every match and will be penalised if you make a tackle higher than the base of the sternum. His tackle was just below the bloke's nose. I mean, so how do you say that the game is the same for everybody anymore? It's not, is it? There are special rules being instigated for the world's best players, and it's just not right.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. At this time of the day,
The Tight Five.
5 separate sporting topics, roughly a minute or so on each. When the bell goes ding, so do we. Quickly move on to the next topic. Spain, Sweden last night, and Australia, obviously England tonight. Should we be apologising to the Spanish team for the way that we have treated them in New Zealand during the duration of this Football World Cup? I believe so. Hawke's Bay, Waikato tonight, 5:35, NPC. We're going to go big time on the NPC since New Zealand Rugby don't give a stuff about it. George Mawala, should his ban be overturned if Owen Farrell's is? How are Chelsea buying all those goddamn players? The Black Caps South African Test Series has now been thrown into utter turmoil given the fact that the South Africans have just said that their best team is not coming, that they are now obliged to play the South African T20 comp there, the one that's run by the BCCI. As well as that, Australian netball in the absolute poop. The world's top professional competition is facing an almost $8 million loss. Let's kick it off, though. Owen Farrell. We began the show with this, his ban overturned. We talked about that, Lachlan. What do you think the chances are that George Mawala at least gets a reduction? 10 weeks was the starting point. Apparently it's going to go down to 5. The outrage that will happen if his ban doesn't get overturned as well, and Farrell's has.
Well, common sense, assuming it prevails, would mean that George Mawala gets a massively reduced ban or doesn't get a ban at all. He shouldn't get one at all if Owen Farrell gets away with that.
Is this to do with the World Cup? Is this all because of that? That World Rugby is saying that their best players have got to be fronting at the World Cup. And these internationals are just a hazard beforehand, aren't they? They're just a foot trip for players at the moment. Or should the players actually be heeding the edict that has been handed down by World Rugby for about 5 years now? Change your tackle techniques.
Yeah, I just... it's just really... it's that when the rules came out at the start of the year, it's both incredibly frustrating to, one, see them not be followed, but also to know that... I mean, Mawala probably will get a suspension. And there will be a double standard.
And he deserves one.
He does deserve one.
Same as Owen Farrell deserves one.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. We covered this a lot earlier, and it's just a frustrating situation. I don't want him to not be at the World Cup because he's a name, and I've always actually kind of liked Owen Farrell. But there's no fairness if the rules aren't followed and the law isn't upheld, if you will.
How do you call it tonight? Oz England?
England. They're a better team. I'll say England. Part of me doesn't really. This sounds really bad. Part of me doesn't really want Australia to win the World Cup.
Why not?
I don't know. I just don't. I like the Matildas.
I'd like the Matildas to win as opposed to Australian sport winning anything else. I'd rather that they won that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You know, rather than
okay.
Eddie Jones. And also the other thing is if they won, the pressure on Eddie Jones, mate.
Oh, no, there's no pressure on him.
Of course there is.
No, there's not.
He's a world champion sitting over there. The girls, they play football, mate.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the
What
Rugby
does that
World
do to
Cup.
your sport? It just
Nothing.
relegates it further back over here where no one in Australia can.
Well, yeah, but that's not Eddie Jones' fault. That's Rugby
Everything's Eddie
Australia of
Jones'
the last
fault.
20 years. That's their fault.
Eddie Jones takes the credit for everything that goes well.
Oh, sure. Fine, he can do that, but it's got nothing to do with it.
Hawke's Bay versus Waikato 5:35 tonight, NPC Rugby, Wednesday night.
I had no idea.
Well, you do now.
And it's my team as well. Is it at McLean Park?
Well, it's in Hawke's Bay. Where else do they play?
We'll probably lose. We're on to our third head coach in 3 years. We'll lose.
I like the idea of this game. I like the idea of the time of this game. I like the idea of the midweek game. Yeah, come on, man. If the Football World Cup wasn't going on, what are you watching tonight? A good game of NPC Rugby.
I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't sit right with me.
Remember a couple of years ago that they used to have games on Monday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays? You just couldn't
They
keep
had them
up.
every night, yeah. There's something on every night.
What the hell?
Yeah. I liked it when they had Thursday games. I thought that was good. And then they had Friday, Saturday, Sunday games. But they need to just group it together into 2 days.
I think Monday night football, rugby or rugby league, can bring back some MNF, mate. Come on. Give us something on a Monday night.
No. NPC needs to be divvied up into 2 days, on Saturday and Sunday afternoons.
And red zone it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Should we be apologising to the Spanish women's football team? They are now going to the final. They're leaving New Zealand now. They
Not
will
us.
never be coming here. We shouldn't be apologising, but as a country, we should be apologising on a couple of fronts. The whole Palmerston North is boring thing I thought was funny. But what wasn't funny?
we all agree.
We all
say
and
that.
also, Palmerston North, what you do is you celebrate that. You put a big sign out saying, well,
We
we're
are
the boring
yeah.
Palmerston
And then
North.
if you notice that, you'll actually get tourists.
You'll get people going
You will
there.
get tourists.
Exactly. I want to go to the most boring place there is. Yes, go there and have some fun. No, I just think that, and I still maintain, and I'm not disrespecting anyone here who may have been offended, but I think you were offended about the Spanish team who never mocked the haka. They were having some fun. You were offended because you were told to be offended. And that is the people down there in Palmerston North who, were at the forefront of the apology, who were all over the news saying that our culture, our taonga has been ridiculed
Yeah, it's
here.
not
No,
for sale or something.
It wasn't. As I keep saying, it's exactly the same, and this is a perspective that you've just got to somehow get your head around. It's exactly the same as people dressing as Swiss cheeses to go along and support Switzerland in Dunedin. The rest of the world don't look at New Zealand as having a holy culture of anything. It's like wearing a Mexican sombrero. You do it because it's fun, don't you? Yeah. No one looks at it any differently though. That no one goes out deliberately these days to go to another country and mock their culture.
Yeah.
Just think about the headspace that would entail. These are women playing professional sport to win a world championship. They didn't deliberately do anything.
No.
They got to New Zealand. What do they know about New Zealand? They know there's a bit of haka takes place.
Oh, All Blacks, haka,
Let's have a bit of fun.
Let's do it.
And to turn it into what you turned it into and make them apologise formally and go on to a but it's just, honestly, it's offensive is what it is to anyone that's got a brain is what it is.
And
I'm not denigrating anyone's culture here. I'm just saying apply a little perspective from their point of view.
But there are people out there, who...
Oh, no, they love this, mate. They thrive on it.
Well,
want
they
this.
do,
They want to be offended.
They want there to be an issue. There's always got to be an issue.
There's always got to be
be something to complain about. And if there's not something to complain about,
then
there's
some
nothing
financial
for them to do
compensation on the other end of that.
I mean, it's like someone walking into an Australian tourist shop and playing the didgeridoo. No, you can't do that. You're not
picking
Australian.
up a
You're not
boomerang and
Aboriginal.
throwing it, you know?
I mean, is that appropriating
I think
culture?
it's a celebration is
It's
what
a
it is.
celebration.
Black Caps are now going to play a second-string South African side in the 2 tests here in New Zealand because the South African players
Well, at
have
least
to
means
stay
that
in
we're actually
South
going to probably beat them in the series, which we haven't done here in how long?
What does this say for you? Look, we've just had the Ashes. You know how good Test cricket is, and the South African Cricket Board are insisting that all their players stay and play.
Why?
A South Africa T20.
Ooh.
Their version of the Big Bash or Super Slash or whatever, dumb bollock crash, whatever it is called, mate. I mean, it's just... Is this the future of Test cricket? Certainly seems like it, doesn't it? Where are you, David White? I thought they were doing 7 tests a year against all the major nations.
No,
in
he
the
said
world.
10. He said 10. We play 10 tests a year.
How the
against
hell are
best teams
Chelsea
in the world.
buying all these players? They've spent over £1 billion, mate, in the last year.
No, not £1 billion. I think it's about 860 million pounds. It's 1.6 billion New Zealand dollars over the last 3 transfer windows. They've made about 34 35. I think I calculated yesterday or the day before. They've made 35 signings in 3 windows.
How?
35.
The financial
and all of them
fair
have cost-
play rules
Now,
say that you've got to balance your books by selling players, selling shirts, selling subscriptions.
This is what they're doing. So all of the players are being... I watched a video and what I gathered was that all of the players are being signed to like 8-9 year contracts. So their wages are being spread out over this period. So from that perspective, they're not breaking any rules. In terms of the spend, I don't know how this is allowed. They are spreading the payments out over that period as well.
Creative accounting is what it is.
Exactly. But what it is creative accounting. But the clubs that they're paying, they're paying them up front, aren't they? So they're giving Brighton £150 million in this window for Caicedo, because Brighton wouldn't accept that over 6 years, I'm sure. So I don't know how that works. But anyway, what it means is that they're only spending a certain amount of money over the next few years. And because they've sold a bunch of players over the last year as well, like Kai Havertz, Mason Mount, they're actually in credit. They've actually...
Oh, stop it.
But on their books, on their balance sheet. However, what they have also done is that in 2028, in the January transfer window, they've already spent £200 million.
And for that window already?
Well, no, but hypothetically, they've already spent a million.
Mate, this is just sick.
like
The whole
like
thing is
£100 million.
It's just corrupted.
Because of the way they're stretching it out. But it screws them up, because it now means that if the current playing group flame out, then Chelsea can't spend any money over the next 8 years.
Fair play rules, what fair play? What
Devlin,
I'm tired as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
the platform.
He is one of the toughest athletes New Zealand has ever produced. He's a horse. He is an Iron Man. He is a 4-time Commonwealth Games gold medal winner from Birmingham. He is a multiple world champion. What a pleasure to have Aaron Gate back on board. I began by asking me, you lost a little bit of skin, did you, pal, overnight?
Yeah, stage 1 today of Tour of Denmark, and it was a bit of it was a very tense peloton, and we had a bit of everything weather-wise, massive downpour at one stage and gravel washed all over the road, and then just my life had flashed before my eyes about 5 times beforehand, and I thought I was in the clear, made the front selection towards the end of the race, and then got pushed into a curb and high-sided over it. So that was the end of my race, unfortunately. But, well, still finished, and just, bit less skin on the arse cheek, ready for tomorrow's stage.
Oh, so you're back into it tomorrow?
Yeah, stage 2 of 5 tomorrow.
And when you say a little less skin, so just to describe to those of us who are wincing at the moment, you salve that, you wash it, you bandage it, and you gently sit back on the seat? How does this work?
Well, straight in the team bus afterwards for a shower and some betadine and some gauze, and scrub away to get all the dirt and grit and stuff out of it, and then some what am I trying to say? Wax gauze, and cover that up, keep it moist. And luckily, it's just sort of on the outside. Well, I won't go into too much detail here, but the outer edge of my glute rather than actually where I'm sitting on the saddle, so I can still turn the pedals.
Multiple world champion Aaron Gates is with us. How does that sound, mate? Multiple world champion. That's cool, eh?
Yeah, nice to be able to chalk that up.
Oh, that's awesome. Last week, the world champs, the best performance ever by a New Zealand team, and this is on the back, of course, of your triple gold at the Commonwealth Games. You're ticking boxes, mate. I mean, at some stage, you're going to be able to sit back and I suppose really absorb this and look at it and go, wow, and pat yourself on the back. But I mean, life goes on, the job goes on. But just track us back to that. You said that winning that points race was enormous for you. Why?
It's a race I've always been super passionate about, and to me, it's just quintessential track cycling. You go out there and you've got everything. Like it's a tactical race, but it's also you got to have an engine to do it, and you got to have speed too. So it kind of, to me, it's like the amalgamation of what track cycling is. And my first experience was back at the World Champs actually Delhi in 2010, where I think I was 4th or 5th. Narrowly missing the podium, and sort of got to race guys that I aspired to racing like, and it was kind of the first time I'd actually been able to go out there at a World Champs level, Com Games aside, and then race like how I wanted to race, and sort of be the one dictating the terms rather than be dictating too.
2 golds, 4 silvers, 5 bronze so far at the World Championships, and you've competed in them in over a decade. It's just outstanding, mate. What does it mean to you in the team pursuit in the Madison? You got bronze at Glasgow in those. What does it mean to you doing the teams things with the other New Zealand boys?
Yeah, it's team events are still my favourite. You go out there with the guys that you've been, hacking away at, training with, and sort of riding your guts out so you can go out there and try and do your best performance on race day. And then I was rooming with Campbell, we got back to the room after the TP and he was just like, shit, bronze sucks, so let's not do that again. And then we went out there and got it again the following night. But I was still, for us, that bronze of the Madison was kind of at least a good sign. We went into the last sprint. We could have actually won it had the teams that didn't get second and got third in that final sprint behind us winning the last sprint. We could have actually been ahead of them. So it was a close race, and it just shows that we're well within the hunt and the fight going into Paris, which is pretty exciting. It's an event that I was meant to ride in Tokyo before I crashed out, so I was pretty gutted to miss that opportunity with Campbell then. So this will kind of hopefully next year be a bit of redemption for previous Olympics.
Aaron Gate with us. It's not your swan song, is it, mate?
Nah, not ready for that yet.
Okay.
Still having too much fun.
So when we spoke to you last year, and me and Lachlan laugh about this in the office all the time, that, you'd just gone to Birmingham, you'd won 4 golds, and then you were in Spain, and I remember ringing you and saying, oh, God, it must be lovely having a holiday, Costa del Sol and everything, and you were back on the bike within days, and you were back at work. And this is the same thing, mate. So when you won last week, we were sitting here and I said, I bet he's back working, I bet he's back doing race. He said, no, he must be taking a break. How do you do it? How do you physically do it?
Well, actually, the worst thing was flying back from Glasgow. The airline lost our bikes for a couple of days, so I was forced to not ride for a couple of days before coming here for a 5-day stage race. And it's a bit of a shock to the body when you go from doing like a 4K team pursuit and even a 50K Madison to then doing back-to-back 170 to 210K road stages. So it's you kind of know that you're going to pay the price of you if you don't get the work done before these sort of things. Luckily, the legs were actually quite good today before things went tits up, literally. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of what makes cycling so enjoyable for me, that there's just so many facets. But I do have to admit it was pretty hard leaving the family again after only being at home for 2 days and telling my poor boy Axel that Dad was going away again for a bit, and then back home for 1 day before the next one in France next week. So it's I mean, for me though, it's also like I know that the end of the season's not that far away. I've got another 5 weeks or so, and then actually get to put the feet up for a couple of weeks and start the final rebuild phase before we do all the finishing touches physically before the big dance in Paris next year.
When you say put the feet up for a couple of weeks, do you actually ride at all during that time, or do you physically and mentally give yourself that time off?
Nah, hang the bike up and don't touch it. Last year I actually took a full 4 weeks off, but I started riding again, and that was a bit too much time because it was sort of like, I don't actually think I can started to feel like I could never be a bike rider again. So I'll probably shorten that up a bit by a week or so this year. But it is so important you take that break. I know of guys that have tried to just ride every second day or something in the break, and then it comes time to start really racing again mid-season and they're already burnt out. It's just so important, both mentally and physically. You do give the body a chance to take some respite.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. Aussie versus England tonight. It's the Matildas versus the Lionesses. Football, round ball football has overtaken Australia. Even the raconteur, the Republican, the loud-mouthed, bombastic Australian Peter FitzSimons is convinced. Lord Peter FitzSimons, there you are up in that end of the world. Goodness only knows what you're doing. While down this part of the world, round ball football played by the fairer sex has taken over Australian sport. Are you even aware?
Yes, Smarty. I've only been here for a couple of days, and I must say there's been a couple of brilliant pieces written about it in the Sydney Morning Herald.
Right, I must.
As a matter of fact,
he probably written by you, were they? What a coincidence.
It's the old gag. It still works. I wrote both of them. Look, I mean, I've never seen anything like it in Australia. Somebody wrote a piece the other day, seriously, that I think in 2015 the Matildas played and there were 2,000 people that turned up in Brisbane. Here we are, .3 carry 1 subtract 2, 8 years later, and there's 80,000 people turning up every time they play, and it's set Australia on fire, absolutely on fire. And for that quarter final, I was on the plane coming to London, and it killed me not to be part of it. But then the Qantas pilot was telling us as we go along, and when the final victory came, everybody on the plane clapped.
Peter, you say this is a major surprise. A man of your obviously intellect, intelligence, and also world knowledgeness would have. I'll start again. Peter, obviously you say you're surprised, but I don't think that you are you? I mean, this tournament we all knew was going to take off, and it just took something, a spark, a team that starts winning, and Australia love a winning team, don't they?
No, well, Marty, I know you well enough to know that you've been a soccer aficionado for many, many years, and I never quite got it. I just never really understood it. For me, soccer just not absorbing. Rugby, yes, absorbing. Rugby league, yep, Aussie rules. I never quite understood soccer until, I've seen a few games where you go, wow, that's really terrific. But these Matildas, it's a combination of things. They really are playing in a stunning fashion, apart from, I think it was the second game against Nigeria where they were off the boil. But the way they played against France, the chances that they took. And again, I've never appreciated the just the sheer skill level. So the playing when Mary Fowler, I guess she must be a midfielder. She put this pass to Caitlin Ford, which outsprinted six of the defenders, the Danish defenders, leaving Caitlin Ford with the goalie and one defender to beat. And the skill with which she put the ball between the goalie's legs into the goals, and it was so dramatic, so fantastic. And really, Australia these days, we don't do tribal stuff where it's rare that as a nation everybody's got their fist in the air saying how good is this, because there must be 150 different pay television channels, games, social media. We're like much of the Western world, we're split up into so many points of attention, and this tournament has been common attention. This has been something that everybody in Australia has been talking about. Even people like me who have no tradition of watching soccer whatsoever, don't really understand it, don't particularly care. But this tournament, I care, and I really want the Matildas to win, and I've been inspired by them, and I'm emblematic of much of the Australian population.
Record crowds, record attendances, everything else. It's now been talked about that Australia are going to put another bid in for the Men's World Cup because you got snaked last time. I think the Qatari cash scuppered you last time, but surely this must impress FIFA.
But tell me about New Zealand. I mean, quite seriously, I know sadly the Silver Ferns.
Football Ferns this time. The Silver Ferns is the netball team.
The what one?
The Football Ferns.
Sorry, tell me which.
The Silver Ferns at the netball.
I know
it's hard to keep up. We all struggle.
They didn't go that far. But tell me about New Zealand. I know that the Football Ferns sadly didn't get out of the group stage. But tell me, did New Zealanders turn up in force to watch the matches?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Look, our government minister, the finance minister, was moaning that we'd only sold 300,000 tickets before the tournament, which I thought was extraordinary anyway, given the economic climate of this country.
Yeah.
But of course, it's like everything else. Well, the great thing about World Cups is they build their own momentum, and that's what the young generations love these days. Everyone loves to be part of something that everyone else is a part of, and as soon as you get a bit of attention, you get a win, the crowds are going. We turned up at the Women's World Cup the same way. I mean, it was a slow burner to start with, but once the team started winning, once everyone started thinking, oh, look at that thing over there, that shiny bright thing, we're going to run along and do that as well. It's great to be part of something that feels good, and that's what this World Cup is.
Well, the thing you talk about, I mean, it's worked. Australia and New Zealand co-hosting, that has worked. And the thing, with Australia, we are a strongly multicultural community. So I did a piece in my column the other day about Uruguay I think it was Uruguay played in. No, it was Morocco. Morocco played in Adelaide, and after the match was over, they're all disconsolate because they've lost. But the hotel's mobbed by the Moroccan community because we've got, doesn't matter where you come from in the world, we've got enough people that will fill the stadiums with those of your country and native-born Australians who love it anyway.
That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do though is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
Unbelievable! Incredible!
The Platform.